Hey everybody. First of all, the title's a joke. It's a joke. It's a joke. Okay, I'm just kidding. It's because, okay, so first I'm kind of going to just run through the situation. So I'm T. Snyder, all right? I'm the creator of a show called Conspiracy Synergy, all right? And that's built around trying to get our friends and family up to speed on the basics of the gigantic conspiracy that exists around us in a non-confrontational and emotionally calibrated way. And the reason I approach it in that way is because a lot of the time people have to deal with their feelings before they can even begin to comprehend the facts. And that's something that I return to over and over again about what we're all grappling with. It's as much an emotional state that we're wrestling is as it is information. They're not separate from one another. They're very much a part of each other. So anyway, in the recent year, or this past year, what I've been doing with the show Conspiracy Synergy are mini documentaries on a variety of different people in the truth community who have been doing it for a really long time, and in my personal opinion, are doing a pretty good job. I disagree with a lot of the different kind of like contentions that some of them will make in their own sphere of thought or influence, but that's okay, because we can disagree on some things as long as we're able to come together and talk about it. That's ultimately what's most important, because in due time we learn from each other and then we level up because of it. And that's something I think is really important for us to do. So the last one that I did was on Mark Passio, and I'm still kind of like figuring out what the next projects are going to be. And a big part of being able to do those documentaries is researching all the time. I've personally been studying this stuff for about 15 years in a variety of different directions, and I'm trying to pull it all together in order to be able to provide that perspective and also create the media that is accessible to those who haven't heard about any of this yet. And they kind of just need a quick version before they can really jump in. So I was looking into the idea of doing one of those documentaries on Jason Breshears of ARCHAIX, because I think he's an extraordinary individual with a remarkable story, and he has offered so much to the world. And so that would be an incredible story to tell. And so what happened was that I reached out to Big John, who's Jason's producer. Hey, Big John, you're super cool. Great kind of going back and forth with you. And I'd reached out to him and kind of pitched the idea, and he's like, nah, Jason's not cool with the idea of someone following him around with a camera, which I totally get that. It's kind of like uncomfortable. And so that's one of those things where a person would have to be comfortable enough to take that on. And if you don't know me, then it's like, yo, where's this guy coming from? So I totally get it, totally get it. And then, after that kind of like correspondence with Big John, I am still watching ARCHAIX because I'm trying to learn from him because I think he's incredible. And I disagree on a few notes, but that's cool. And so I was watching this one video, and I took some exceptions to a few different things that were said in it because I disagree with the simulation theory aspect. In no way, shape, or form do I contest with the chronology. Very important distinction there. My friendly, and it was in fact a friendly invitation or challenge as was put forward by me, was built around broadening the simulation theory to encompass not only human beings, but everything that is manifest in the material realm. Whereby the ARCHAIX model, so far as I understand it, and I may be mistaken, is more centered around the human experience. And I disagree with that. I think that it's a much more complicated mesh network of consciousness. And that's in essence what I was alluding to in the video that I had sent unlisted to Big John. Now, I didn't hear back from Big John, which is cool, because he's busy, you know, you got a lot going on, and I respect that. But I waited like a few days, maybe almost a week or something, and then I'm like, you know, I don't want to just send this to Jason, because he might not watch it, and then I'd be waiting another week. So I figured, okay, I'll just make it public. So I did. And the number one criticism I got was how quickly I speak. Y'all, I was speaking that quickly because I was trying to get through it as quickly as I could so that the time stamp on the bottom wouldn't be too large. Because if you're sending a dude who's really, really busy a lot of information and it's like 50 minutes or like 5 hours or something like that, ain't nobody got time for that, you know? So I wanted to rush through it for two reasons. One, my camera cutoff that I'm recording on right now is at 20 minutes. So I was trying to get everything into 20 minutes, which means that I really have to speak like this in order to be able to do it, okay? Doesn't mean that I talk like that all the time. And the other reason was because it was out of respect for Jason. I didn't want to waste his time. I didn't want to throw a whole bunch at him that was so much that he wouldn't have time to take it in. So that was one of those things where that video wasn't actually going to be public. It only ended up going public because I didn't hear back from Big John, and once again, that's not a criticism against him. He does an amazing job. So that's kind of the situation. And then Jason came back at me with his thoughts on what I had presented to him. And I agree with a lot of it, and I think mostly this boils down to kind of just a misinterpretation of what my contentions were. And as if I was in some way dismissing or attempting to cherry pick the chronological record, which is not the case. Jason, I straight up defer to you and Chronicon and your chronology as the preeminent example of that in human history. And in no way, shape, or form was I trying to cherry pick or detract from that whatsoever. My fundamental contention is that this is not so much a simulacrum as it is a shared dream. It is not so much mechanistic in nature, although we do perceive it that way because it basically operates that way at this current juncture in our collective evolution. My contention is that there is a much, much broader expanse of consciousness that goes well beyond us, and we are sort of a mid-bracket of that consciousness and are doing our utmost to progress forward rather than to devolve into our bestial nature. And that's basically what I'm saying, is that it's not like a challenge against ARCHAIX. It's saying it's the AIX part that I'm really curious about. What if that isn't an AIX, but it's something that through the specs that we look at things, it appears identical to that? Because you know how some things will take an appearance that is very different than what they actually are? And the higher orders of intelligence or competency and technology might veil themselves so well that it would be identical to a machine. But if it exists in a pure metaphysical soup of raw, kind of just like mystical nature, then it would be able to take on the structure of what appears to be a machine, when really it's a different modality of thought or existence altogether. Once again, I would contend a shared dream. So I'm going to go through a breakdown of what Jason said and my response to it. In no way, shape, or form is it intended to be disrespectful. The Jason impersonation that I'm going to do is really just me having fun with it so that you can track the back and forth between me here and what he wrote. And it's really just me being playful, man. It's not a mockery. I think you're epic. I really need to clarify that as many times as I can. I'm going to go into it over and over again. So yeah, no, that's just a little bit of an introduction to the situation at a slower pace. And I'm just going to go over the whole thing so that we can all be up to speed on the situation and have a fruitful and bountiful conversation of breaking bread with one another. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Here's the back and forth between me and my impersonation of Jason based on his response to the video that I had originally sent him privately, or sent Big John privately, that I then decided to post publicly. And I wasn't done with any kind of animosity, my man. It genuinely was like a friendly sentiment. So I hope you're doing well, and please don't take me impersonating you here as if it's any disrespect, because that's really not what I mean, man. It's like, I think you're super charming and really cool dude. So yeah, I'm gonna dive into some of the points of rebuttal here now. Okay. Best part of waking up is ARCHAIX in your cup. Man, coffee's so real, let's do it. Wait a minute, what's this? Alright, Phoenix mode activate. I'm gonna light this guy up. Mr. Snyder. Mr. Snyder? Oh man, I'm gonna get lectured here. Alright, I wish we were on a first day basis, but okay, Mr. Bashirs, I'm ready for it. What you got? Thank you for taking the time to illustrate your thoughts. Your delivery is too fast, in my opinion. But my earliest videos were exactly the same. I'm impressed with your intelligence and willingness to find fault where you perceive it to be. The discussion of left brain, right brain, the self-created history, egregores as thought constructs of pure invention made into experience is a friendly accusation that the ARCHAIX chronology of the world is a Jason invention. Cleverly veiled attack against 2.5 decades of data mining to replace it with esotericism is the answer. Okay, my man, alright. In no way, shape, or form am I contesting a single point of your chronology whatsoever. That's not my intention at all. Not where I'm coming from. The crux of where I'm coming from is the interpretive lens through which we all view things, alright? Like all of this. It's something going on with all of our brains right now. I was not questioning the historicity of your research, which is impeccable and extraordinary. All right, I default to you and Chronicon as the preeminent chronological history of our world, publicly available for everyone to research and verify for themselves. I really need to stress that point. Like, for real, I'm not questioning your chronology whatsoever. It's not a cleverly veiled attack, although, you know, like, I understand that you are often subject to such things, so I completely get interpreting my video in that way. And if you don't know me, you can be like, why is this dude coming at me like he's my friend when he's not? You know, nah, dude. No. The dismissal of thousands of verifiable data points and whole data sets of chronological citations from traditions, religious texts, regnal lists, and annual registers, ancient writers, wall reliefs, and artifacts with inscriptions, all documented in ARCHAIX, that demonstrate a perfect sequential order of events in world history is premature, and this 26-minute challenge in no way provide a refutation. Thus, the title is bait click. I have to conclude that you titled it thus in order to maximize views from a community you are obviously not a part of. I titled the video the way I did, not as clickbait, but because the title is sincerely where I was coming from. I think you're epic, man. I'm not trying to backhand you here at all. Not at all. Such an attack, veiled as friendly, should offend the hundreds of fact-checkers who began as critics of ARCHAIX, but are now among the staunchest adherents. It's really not an attack veiled as friendly, and I really don't understand advocating for offense to be taken by the community, as again, in no way am I contesting your chronology. And I am not intentionally phrasing things to hurt anybody, so no, that's not where I'm coming from. I am more than willing to debate world chronology and the falsity of the uniformitarian model, but you offer no such structure here. This is a book show at 2 times the speed it should be. To clarify, my outreach video is specifically in response to one video of yours and the contents thereof. To clarify to the ARCHAIX community, which, by the way, I also hold in high regard for their devotion to exploring truth and curiosity and open-mindedness and all that, it's great. I have, like, to clarify to all of you, I have not been able to review the full wealth of information that Jason has presented over the years, though I continue to study and do my utmost to explore and comprehend the extraordinary expanse of data points brought into the record by him. Okay? Like, I'd approximate that, like, I've taken about 500 hours of overall investment into ARCHAIX material, but I briefly chatted with an ARCHAIX veteran on my YouTube comment section. I had Shell in his name. Seemed like a cool dude. And he was pretty clear that, like, oh man, 500 hours is nowhere near enough time. Which I totally get. You know, it's a lot, and I'm still progressing. And I apologize if I gave you the impression that I was deliberately cherry picking. Again, that's not my intention. You seem to have watched one video and were inspired to address what you believe are contentions. Your Fermi paradox example makes us redefine what an intelligence is. In ARCHAIX model, humans are the only known non-animal intelligence. Nor is the Fermi paradox illustrative of the ARCHAIX model of reality. Okay, that's a cool point, clarification for the Fermi paradox. In the ARCHAIX model, humans are the only known non-animal intelligence. I'll actually disagree with that. The plant kingdom demonstrates profound intelligence via the mycelium network, and to a similar effect, I give the example of shamans who asked the jungle for the recipe of how to create ayahuasca. Which, for those who don't know, ayahuasca is created in a very specific way using very specific ingredients from a variety of different plants, and that recipe was sourced from listening to the plant kingdom's insights in a shamanic style of communication largely absent from the Western world. I can also cite the documentary The Secret Life of Plants, which touches on the entwinement of consciousness between all things, all material matter. I'm basically saying there are different brackets of consciousness, each of which has their own kind of intelligence, and that intelligence is expressed radically in different ways based on each of those brackets. Those brackets of consciousness are the plant, animal, mineral kingdom, human beings, elementals, and let's just say other stuff moving beyond that into the spiritual hierarchy, upwards and downwards. So that's where you get into like possession and glorification, that sort of thing. But at the same time, and this is like an important qualifier for my contentions about that, it can also be contended that all of that stuff is just an elaborate vestige of the human imagination. You know, like that could just be like, oh, well, we interpret it that way, but that's not what it is, you know? And so that's why the definition of terms here is really important. And that's what I was stressing, how we as human beings think of intelligence. Each of those brackets of intelligence that I mentioned functions very differently for each kind of consciousness and what it is trying to achieve, or what its role is in the larger mesh network of all living and simply, let's just say, stuff that isn't alive, you know, like this cup. Does it have its own kind of like thing going on? Yeah, it does. Do I understand it? Nah, man, to me it's just a cup, you know? So it's one of those things where it's there, but does that mean that it, in the larger collection of all of matter, is unaware of the fact that it's a cup? According to human thoughts, yeah. But in a different state of perceptual aperture, this thing next to me might actually have some kind of cup personality. I don't know. I'm just saying, it all works so differently that at a certain point it becomes borderline impossible to extrapolate from our perceptual lens what is going on the other end. And that's kind of what I was saying insofar as the definition of terms here. We always define intelligence according to our definition and our perspective of what we think intelligence is. But I'd argue that, like, trees are more intelligent than people, you know? And that's kind of one of those things where I don't really see people as that intelligent right now. We're destructive, we're out of harmony, we play God, we violate natural law endlessly, and we invite our own destruction thereby. I'd argue trees are smarter than people once again, and I see Mother Nature as a holistic organism on the whole. So that's kind of just clarifying a bit of my perspective on that, and why the conversational framework of Fermi's paradox is inherently presumptuous about the very nature of what intelligence is and what it looks like, assuming we're even intelligent enough to perceive what real intelligence looks like, you know? And I was really basically just saying that, like, if we're not intelligent enough to interact with intelligences significantly beyond us, they might just make themselves invisible to us. Or we might have to meet certain requirements before we're able to interact with them. And so that's kind of just like clarifying that point. You altered what I claim about orbs to present your argument. Orbs are what humans perceive on our end of a remote operated technology acting as rangefinders and have the ability to induce phenomena and are probably operated by humans outside or inside the construct. But you didn't mention any of this. You replace an ARCHAIX idea about orbs with your own assertion that orbs are subservient intelligences serving a greater being. There could be no debate about this, and I've never offered one. Man, I'm very sorry if I altered what you said about orbs. Once again, that is not my intention. I apologize. I'd be frustrated if someone took my view and turned it a little bit to fit their view, so it's not what I'm trying to do. And I'm not coming from a place of malice here, man. I'm really not. my take on this is pretty much basically the same as you wrote here, and this is me quoting you, and I'm not going to do the impersonation here, but this is a quote. Orbs are what humans perceive on our end of a remote operated technology, acting as rangefinders and have the ability to induce phenomena, and are probably operated by humans outside or inside the construct. Yeah, you know, like, I think the only real difference in our viewpoint that's there is you seeing them as outside the construct, and me phrasing more or less the same thing as they only pop in and out of our materialistic perceptual lens. So, which is, like, once again, is basically the same way of describing the thing, you know. And so I think we're actually pretty much on the same page there, and my bet again, if I distorted your view, really not trying to do that. Supporting your argument defining non-human intelligence, you cite a guy from a TED Talk who has no data, but mere opining that predicting the future is the signature of non-human intelligence. The TED Talk I mentioned is it's like removing the human lens of interpreting intelligence according to human behavior. It doesn't require data to reinterpret a concept. So you're right, there's no debate there. I was entering that point as a contextual reframing of how one can think of the concept of intelligence overall. And that's really just like Fermi's paradox, man. It's like, it makes a lot of assumptions about the nature of what intelligence is. And that's really what I was getting at there. I should not have to itemize the problems with this. I have over 500 members in my cipher community using software based off of the arithmetic we have observed operable in our experience, and we are predicting the future on a daily basis, and I assure you, all of the cipher members are humans. Okay, so mentioning the cipher community as an example of accurately predicting the future is a great example, and kudos to you for creating that and building an infrastructure for it to flourish and expand. That's awesome, and I look forward to seeing where it leads, you know. So far as I gather, being able to do that hinges upon the math you understand well enough to draft future outcomes from. The point here being that, like, the cipher community is using that which is inherent to the realm we live in to determine future outcomes. So collectively, you have demonstrated the ability for human beings to align themselves with the objective truth around us. Different modalities of intelligence would align themselves with that same basic math that is inherent to the realm to serve their particular expression of intelligence. So that's like sacred geometry and phi showing up in the plant and animal kingdom, stuff like that. A great, like, okay, so like actually I'll give it an example of that, and these are just some more books to enter into the record, is something called biogeometry. And there are 3 different books that start, and it's kind of like a progression as far as the sophistication of each text. First one is Back to a Future for Mankind, Biogeometry, Solutions to the Global Environmental Crisis, New Energy Secrets of Ancient Egypt and the Great Pyramids Revealed by Ibrahim Karim, PhD, Dr. SC. Pretty cool ideas, and he touches on some stuff in the pyramid there. So Jason, I'd actually be really curious for you to talk to the guy and reflect on that. This one is Biogeometry Signatures, Harmonizing the Body's Subtle Energy Exchange with the Environment. Same author, Ibrahim Karim, PhD. And this one's really interesting. Like, to give you an example, see these squiggles? Those little squiggly line things? What they did is they put a bunch of them on a table, and they had a bunch of, I think it was kids who had epileptic symptoms. Or, do forgive me, it's like, I've been a while since I read the thing. So they had some issue with their health. And about 80% or more of them intuitively gravitated towards the squiggly line that, when held on their person, diminished their overall symptoms. So in essence, what biogeometry is saying is that there are inherent structures and mathematics that have effects on us that we are not cognitively aware of. And so the third book, and this one's like, you want the hardcore stuff, man, oh yeah. Hidden Reality, the Biogeometry, Physics of Quality, the Science of Subtle Energy and Life Force. This is the 50-year anniversary of biogeometry. Same author, Dr. Ibrahim Karim. If you want to hit the hard stuff for biogeometry, oh man, like, it's a really cool series. And I'd recommend that into some insights about how the raw scaffolding of the realm is inherently intelligent. And the degree to which we align ourselves with that intelligence allows us to see the most benefit. And so that's just like a point of entry into the broader expanse of what I'm alluding to. So I think we can agree that there are trajectories to optimize the accuracy of our ability to predict the future. I'm just saying that each bracket of organism would have a very different desired outcome from their behavior, and we as human beings might not understand that at all. And so that's just a response to that. But it is good to know that the cipher community are all humans. You might have to do like a roll call sometime to weed out any raccoons wearing trench coats. Those can be sneaky little buggers, and you want to make sure they're not screwing up cipher. You cited the recent video and cherry-picked what you wanted to isolate, like Fermi and orbs, and neglected over 70 other assertions made in the video. Many I am fully prepared to debate because they are data-centric and supported. Altering how we perceive things from the factual to the esoteric is all I gathered from your presentation. Okay, so I didn't cherry-pick as in to like dismiss the other points you made. I picked the specific points I wanted to address from that one video. So my doing that wasn't therefore saying like the other stuff isn't important. That's not where I was coming from. I'm for the most part in agreement with most of your views. Like, really, I am. I just frame them differently a lot of the time. Framing them differently isn't intended to alter from the factual to the esoteric. I'm saying factually someone who's on acid is going to see things very differently. How we think of things is kind of like acid in a way. You're looking at this, like someone could be looking at the same thing, but it seems very different because of the thought structure that they rattle around in their own mind as the way of seeing things. So I'm not trying to supplant facts. I'm really not doing that. I'm more switching out the lens through which we view those facts, and that's not with the intention of distorting them or omitting them or replacing them or trying to remove fact and replace it with fiction. It's something as simple as saying that the perceptual lens is profoundly important insofar as what we project and what we interpret and what we are ultimately bound by, largely wrapped up because we haven't allowed ourselves to open our mind. So that's more of where I was coming from, and it's not a bad thing, bro. Like, I hear where you're coming from with all that, interpreting that way, but that's not my intention. You stated this realm isn't as much the lens you view it through as it is what is being viewed. This is an untrue statement. We perceive reality through filters, assumptions, biases, and two different souls observing the same phenomena, often interpreted differently, and these variant interpretations modify their personal realities. Left brain versus right brain modality, your argument, not mine. Attacking people's perceptions, modifying them, and changing the meaning of things are how deceivers succeed in drawing people away from the truths and corralling them into dungeon programming. Okay, so important point of clarification here for what I'm saying, and I agree with everything you say here. So no dispute, totally agree. What I'm saying is that each person is able to shift their perceptual lens, and as more people do that, we're increasingly, collectively, able to influence our perceptual apertures as a species. So that would be like diminishing the way in which we view things as a machine, and increasingly open our minds to that which is beyond our current perceptual apertures. That's like the more in which we think of things in a mechanical way, the less we're using our right brain. That's just kind of like what I'm alluding to there. So this is stuff like Rupert Sheldrake's work on the morphogenetic field. The idea that as we evolve, we do so collectively. We're never really removed from each other or any experience that someone else has. And so, like, he gives the example of if you have a mouse run a maze on one side of the world, and then you have a mouse run the same maze on the other side of the world, it'll do it faster. And it'll do it faster because the actions of that first organism are now in the collective memory of all organisms of its likeness. And he documents similar phenomena with the growing of crystals. Grow it one place, it'll grow faster in another place. And so it's one of those things where there's a hidden dynamic of shared feedback between us that is omitted from our conscious awareness, and yet it's an omnipresent phenomenon. So that's kind of what I'm getting at with, as our perception shifts, so too does the stuff around us, because it's all intimately intertwined. Now, that does not mean that truth suddenly becomes collectively subjective rather than documentally objective, because I hate that shit too, dude. Like when people are like, oh, well, I could frame it so much this way that no longer... No, bullshit. It's, if you're open-minded enough, you can see things from a 360 or whatever, all different views at once. And that's like Jason says, truth can be observed from many different angles. And oh yeah, so much. So like I agree with so much of this. I'm literally not trying to take away from objective truth at all, from the absolute truth. Not trying to do that. It's really just saying that as we up our right perceptual lens leaning through which we view things, we're able to see a lot more, and that's an important part of what it is to explore. Yeah, it's basically just like entering into a different phase of development and how we all see, and that adds additional context to the human experience, both past and present. Right now, that can be done on an individual level to like a certain extent, but because we're all like viscerally entwined with one another, that doesn't mean that we can like fully escape the collective view as shared by everyone else. So I totally agree with your statement. I was more referring to it as a byproduct of the collective subconscious of the species and where we're at currently in our evolutionary faculties. For the most part, people are still like 5 to 6 senses and largely operating according to assumption, biases, all the things you mentioned. I'm in agreement with that. So, like, yeah, man, I'm in agreement with you for the most part. And I'm also very much in agreement that people can and do use that to deceive, but that's not where I'm coming from. I'm not trying to deceive. I'm trying to reflect on how we perceive. And that's not to take away from any of the data sets that you have brought forward in any way. Really need to stress that. This has been a very superficial series of claims about what Jason claims, with you exchanging concepts explained in ARCHAIX ad nauseum and altering the name of the phenomena and thereby claiming you are right and Jason is wrong, when all you've done is alter descriptors. It is quite obvious you have almost no knowledge of the immense data brought to the table in ARCHAIX. You've cherry-picked videos, ignoring a massive amount of information. I'm really not claiming that I'm right and you're wrong. I'm not. I'm saying that like speaking in metaphor opens the door for different viewpoints. It's not right or wrong, it's left and right hemispheric dispositional leanings. This is why a lot of the time when you get into esotericism, things that can't necessarily be understood at a certain juncture can be elicited through feelings via story structure. So that's why you'll see a lot of things told to us through the technology of storytelling. And that's done in fairy tales, in movies, and everything, really. And that's how a lot of that right hemispheric thought process will creep into something that allots us the ability to grasp it in the left. It's kind of like a back and forth, and that's sort of what's going on there. And right now we are all, myself included, disproportionately affected by how our brains, which I would kind of once again regard as the lenses through which we view things, are warped to be mechanical and see the world around us as mechanical too. The TV like versus dream example I gave clarifies this, because all of our lenses are warped in a similar way. We identify what I regard as like closer to a shared dream between us through the perceptual lens of it being a machine. We're all doing that right now. We're seeing this thing as like a hologram, basically. So it's not really right and wrong. You're saying it's a shared simulacrum via spiritual technology with human beings outside of the construct. And I'm saying that it's a shared dream of higher entities that in some way bear a certain likeness to human beings, but go through reincarnative cycles all the way from the ground up, through every bracket of consciousness, mineral, plant, animal. We've lived them all before we become human. So I'm saying this whole thing isn't all about people. It's not all about the human point of view. It's holistic, all right? We're kind of just like the mid-bracket of what's going on around us, and we're supposed to live within the rules of the realm, which are natural law, But we're not doing that as a species because we're a bunch of morally retarded assholes for the most part. And I am too in my own way. You know, I'm working on it. I'm trying to get better, trying to get nicer, trying not to be like, and stuff like that all the time. Default negative programming, all that bullshit, you know. And that's kind of like because we're in a transitional period for the species right now. We're trying to move forward, but we keep failing to recognize the rules of the realm that we live in. Which, once again, those rules are natural law. As I clarified like earlier in this presentation, bro, I've only known about you for like a year, man. Like a little bit over a year, but like really diving into your content on the daily, about a year straight now. So that's like 1 to 2 hours every single day for a year. Some days it's like, you know, I'll miss one and then I'll like do like a bunch of studying others. So it's like variable. But that's not cherry picking, man, my man. That's me picking up as I go, okay? And also, I'm coming from a wealth of things outside of your immediate sphere of knowledge, so I don't really understand framing it as an attack, other than you feel attacked, and no doubt you are being attacked relentlessly by a bunch of other shills and assholes, and man, like, I'm in this community full-time too, so I'm aware there. Whew, it's bad out there, dude. I feel you, I get it, so I can understand interpreting it that way. And I apologize if I came across like that. It's not my modus operandus here. It really was like a friendly outreach, man. That's what it was. Evidence. You stated that there is a third scenario aside from uniformitarianism and catastrophism, and that you don't think I've ever addressed it. Then you name it a contract-based reality. These are my words precisely in multiple presentations. You really did listen to a single video and then offered a challenge? Complete waste of time. Okay, bro, I said you postulate it often, which you do. That's why I'm using your descriptor for the contract-based reality, because you postulate it often. But I've also heard you mention on like a few different occasions that you don't fully understand that aspect yet. You know, like the fine-tuned dynamics with which karmic consequence manifests in our lives on an individual level and in the aggregate of the species. Those are the rules of the realm, which is, again, what natural law is. Natural law is like a simple descriptor, is the binding and immutable terms and conditions by which karmic consequence comes to unfold on an individual and on a collective and cosmic scale. All right? In other words, it's objective morality. Morality is objective. It's inherent to nature. It's a non-physical law, although it does manifest physically sometimes. You know, it's like if you punch someone, it's like, yeah, it's going to manifest in them maybe hitting you back, and they have every right to, because you weren't supposed to punch them, you know, unless they threaten to kill you or something, and that's one of those things. If you put someone in a place of duress, well, then that's the equivalent of instigating violence. And sometimes if someone is in a state of duress, like if you're pointing a gun at them, well, you don't want to do that because you might get shot, you know? So it's one of those things where it's like two pillars of enlightenment is non-aggression principle and self-defense. It's both. And it's one of those things where it's like a calibrative balance of respect that we are supposed to understand, show to one another, and so too the whole of this realm that we exist in. And we're not doing that right now as people. We're really not. So if we live in accordance with it, we're good. If we don't, we keep destroying ourselves and each other over and over, suffering the consequences always. You know, it's like, you know Sanskrit a lot better than I do, but I think it's one of those things where it's like lessons will be repeated until they're learned. This is one of those lessons we're supposed to be learning. So I'm sorry if you felt like it was a total waste of time. That really sucks for me to hear. I disagree that it's a total waste of your time. You are wrong on that one, Jason. You are. Natural law is pretty fucking important to understand here, and you misinterpreted a lot of the contentions that I was making. So you are wrong on that one. Again, isolating the Voynich manuscript is not at all an attack on the ARCHAIX model. Okay, I wasn't attacking the ARCHAIX model. Again, I'm not attacking you. Okay, I'm not. I was just saying imagination alone can suffice to explain the Voynich manuscript's existence. That's all. That was kind of just one of those things that was only really in that video. And I think it's a really cool concept to explore the idea of imagination itself being a convergence field. Because that means that people have a lot more power and a lot more ability to change things in this realm than we would necessarily assume. So it's actually a really, really cool thought to reflect on. I appreciate that you understand why I incessantly remind my community that Hancock and friends are shills of the highest order, but I disagree that I need to do anything differently. I have already affected the field, and they have long been in damage control, and 2026 is going to be an intensification of this exposure. Oh man, like, the degree to which you have hammered on them is really important, so I'm not like trying to detract from that at all. Yeah, no, not even one bit. That's epic. I love the fact that you hit that over and over again to really drive it home. That's really important. Wouldn't change it. But sometimes you also get wrapped up in rants about it that just like keep happening over and over again. And like for those of us who are watching you all the time, it's like, yeah, we know, man, we know, man. So it's me wishing that like there was a media construction or a film or something that existed so you didn't have to keep hammering on that one point. I'm not saying you're off whatsoever by hammering on that point. So I appreciate your relentless pursuit of clarifying the record. It's just one of those things where I'm thinking it'd be nice if you didn't have to mention it anymore, because then you could just talk about other stuff, you know? So it's not trying to take away from the importance of you saying it. It's me just wanting to hear you say other things than just that. That's it. And really thinking of the documentary that I'm trying to do on you at some point as a viable way to address that so much that it would put them in a position where they look horrible as a result. So it's one of those things where you're doing that already. I'm not trying to take away from that. It might be that like the only way to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish is to keep doing that. So man, I ain't trying to get in your way on that. Totally respect it. The oldest traditions about the moon is that it was introduced, caused a cataclysm, brought a new race to Earth, and is the origin of demons. The moon became an object of goddess adoration because it was perceived that the goddess was the victor when the moon stabilized and the catastrophe subsided. Okay, that's such a cool perspective on the moon. Do you have like a specific video only on the moon that you've compiled, or is it kind of just like scattered throughout? Because like I have not seen that one overall moon presentation, and I'd really like to, so that's super cool. Thanks for sharing, man. Please let me know if there is just like one compiled moon presentation. I want to check that out. Nothing you say about the collective human objective morality level and the proportion of cataclysmic episodes is contrarian to the ARCHAIX model. In fact, I've related this many times, that the magnitude of destructive fallout is commensurate with the state of the collective at that time. No argument. What you dismiss is that ARCHAIX, it is shown that there are reset protocols in place that can appear at structured times to mitigate this rise of fallen consciousness. The Phoenix phenomena is not restricted to 138-year periods, as I've shown, but also operates locally to reset populations in other sequences, all based off 138, pi and phi. Also, Nemesis X and the Dark Satellite. Plenty of mechanisms in place to trigger resets when needed. Okay, great statement. Thank you for clarifying for me. I actually think that we're like basically on the same page here then. And I want to clarify, and I'm once again, I'm sorry if I misinterpreted in any way. So, our collective actions and the degree to which we live in accordance with natural law directly affects the severity of the Phoenix phenomena and Nemesis X object. As well as I think you'd in essence said that there are like other reset protocols that are in place in order to do little tweaks and adjustment on a local level, building up to those 138-year cycles. If I'm understanding you correctly, I think that's basically what you're saying here. And that's basically like the same contention I'm making as well. So I'm sorry if I didn't catch that from you in the time that I've been listening to your material. I'm really glad to hear it. That's awesome. Although I want to clarify that that is what you're saying, so I'm not misinterpreting or misrepresenting your point of view. Which again, I'm really, really not trying to do. I think you're epic, and I really appreciate you taking the time to draft a response and to hear me out. So I appreciate that, dude. Thanks for stepping up to the plate. It means a lot. You stated, they set up the system that we live in to dupe us into participating in evil without acknowledging it because it is painted as good. Couldn't agree more. Again, a sentiment I have frequently asserted. Your takeaway about Atlantis instantly defaults to an imaginary, older, unknown codex, which is in the same esoteric mumbo-jumbo I attack. 100% of the Atlantis narrative comes from Plato, and all of the chronomarkers in the text point to 13th century BC, which you did not address. Your claim that Atlantean period is preconceived history is totally false, and another staple of the esoteric schools who in the 1800s made up 90% of what is believed to be Atlantean. I did address what you didn't address about Atlantis. I worded this weird in the way I wrote that, but I did address that. I said I don't contest with your chronology at all, and I was basically postulating that it might have been both the Sea People's Federation and potentially something else much older. Okay, so I also said it could literally just be an egregore, which is like a big idea that's created and then shared between a lot of people that then takes on a life of its own. So like uniformitarianism itself would be an example of an egregore. So like to clarify what I'm saying, oh yeah, that could all be made up as an idea by Blavatsky and all that kind of stuff. And then people just take that idea as a reality to steward humanity because everybody believes in it, you know? That may be the case. Or it could be something buried in the mid-Atlantic by previous cataclysms that isn't entirely made up. And once again, I'm saying, okay, well, where's the data set in order to be able to provide Blavatsky with something to stand on? It's important to understand that Blavatsky was the medium. She got her mind-to-mind info from a couple of dudes named the Mahatmas. There aren't any pictures of them because they didn't want their pictures taken, but there are a couple of like photoreal, very, very well done portraits that have been painted of them. Documentation of the Mahatma letters is in a London museum, and they've also been published briefly. They were supposed to be destroyed, but instead they were held on to. And an interesting attribute about these letters is that the ink isn't written on the paper. The ink was elicited from within the paper, as in like they were literally drafting the letters with their minds. They weren't just writing them down. And that wasn't Blavatsky. That was a caliber of people hidden behind the scenes. And that's kind of like when she gets into, I got it from all this stuff. And people are like, yeah, where? It's like, when you get into occultists, you don't, they're hidden, man. A lot of them ain't out there talking about this kind of stuff. They let people who are lower in a bracket of development do that kind of thing. Because at a certain point with all of that, like the development of psi abilities, you're not really supposed to focus on it. It's kind of just a byproduct of progressing as a person in the right direction. Yeah, that stuff will start to happen, but you're not supposed to gobble it up and make that your fixation. Think of it like as you're a tree and you're growing up, at a certain point you're going to start to sprout fruit. But that doesn't mean the tree's supposed to be grabbing its fruit and eating it all the time. You don't even really pay it that much mind. It's just a part of the growth cycle. So that's an important point of reflection for why a lot of the people who have these aptitudes and abilities, you're not really supposed to talk about it, you're not supposed to brag it, you're certainly not supposed to use it or abuse it for the sake of yourself at the expense of everyone else, because that's called sorcery. And the distinction between magic and sorcery is if you are using your abilities for the higher will and the betterment of all, versus sorcery, you're using it on the lower will only for the benefit of yourself. So it's an important point of distinction and clarification there. And I do really wonder if the originals of the Mahatma letters are still in the London Museum, because it's one of those things where, like, you know how the Smithsonian whitewashed like history and like they were like the strong arm for destroying antiquity. I'm really starting to wonder how much those occultist wars are still being waged in the various different documentation that we have access to. Because, like, I mean, you can even look at the LA fires that happened this last year. One of the things that burnt up in that was a theosophical museum. And a lot of people demonize and hate on Theosophy because of Annie Besant and the Lucius Trust, and oh man, there's a lot of bullshit there. They screwed up hugely. But that's not really what the belief system is. For anyone who doesn't understand, the belief system is really simple. It's basically just esoteric Buddhism. It's pretty much what it is. It's saying that there is ancient fundamental structuring of spirituality that all modern religions are loosely derived from. And that's basically the contention that it's making. Your idea that the construct will get better and better is a personal opinion, as is my own that it's pure programming in the collective and designed as a point of soulic passage. No debate there. Okay, I'm not saying this realm is going to get better. I'm saying if we work together, we may be able to reform the realm. So, yeah, it's not really a matter of debate, more just a matter of perspective. I think that people can work together to change things. You tend to lean more towards it as being a fallen world that we're simply meant to pass through, which I get because it's fucking depressing as shit, you know, being here and dealing with all this bullshit, but whatever. I do still think people have the power to change that for the better, both within themselves and so too by working with others. If they set their hearts to that path, work their asses off, and meet the necessary requirements to achieve the task. So it isn't one of those things where we get to be half-assed about it. We got to be really on point, you know. Claiming the Great Pyramid is anything like a metaphysical recycling machine or anything means nothing if you are going to ignore the scientific rectilinear measures of the structure that are patterned in 138-inch and feet units mirroring the Phoenix chronological data. Oh, I'm not trying to ignore or diminish your data showing that the pyramids are a calendar. I'm not trying to do that. I'm not trying to take away from any of your different contentions. I'm more saying in addition to all of that, it may also be a chart of when each soul is going to incarnate in this realm. And the trajectories of those souls as they incarnate from the life path of one life to the next. So it'd be like, okay, here and then here and then here, this soul's going to, that kind of thing. And that was sort of just something that I'd heard. So again, I'm not trying to diminish the merits of your work on the pyramids at all. I think you do a great job. Citing Blavatsky as an authority on reality, a woman who invented her sources, invented whole histories that did not exist, and claimed to be receiving her knowledge from monasteries in India and Tibet that we have never found, is a red flag. Hard to take you seriously. As I'll show in Kali Yuga video today, she was vastly in error of her yuga's antiquity of Atlantis as well. So again, Blavatsky was just a medium. I'm not sourcing her as an authority. It wouldn't surprise me in the least if she screwed up on many occasions, as she was sort of just a vessel to get a fundamental message across. And as I already tried to clarify, one of the options is that it could be largely or partly made up in its account of Atlantis in order to garner attention from the public. That's possible. If it isn't made up and what she was talking about is real, it would exist in pre-recorded history. So there really wouldn't be data sets for that. And if there were archaeological relics, they'd be in the mid-Atlantic. And then Dark Journalist gets into that and talks about land rising, so you gotta wonder, okay, is that just a giant psyop that they've been building for a really long time? And the land that's gonna be rising is gonna have a bunch of like fake relics and stuff planted on it? Or is it real and that's something that she was describing? And I don't really definitively know. It's one of those things where I was saying like it could be this or it could be that. And really, to definitively know, it would only be accessible to us via mystic faculties tapping into the Akashic record. And that's pretty freaking tough for people to do and rely on right now, because our field of vision and our psychic aptitude is foggy and clouded because of how messed up and egotistical we are. And that's kind of like how psi abilities work. Belief is a big part of it. Refinement and getting your skills really on point is a part of it. But we are existing in such a fog of how putrid we are compared to the clarity of clairvoyance, that a lot of the time the things that we're identifying as if it's the divine are actually us keeping our heads up our behinds. It's kind of like a recurrent problem with mankind. Yeah. So, put simply, a psychic is only as good as how much they have clarified themselves, so their biases don't fuck with what they're trying to view. And so I totally hear you on your point there. If this is the best esoteric challenge to my hard data, it is embarrassing. An obvious attempt to coalesce ARCHAIX terminology into an esoteric framework and thereby undermine the immense structure of chronological data that ARCHAIX represents. I am of the opinion that esotericism is the default to those who either do not want to do the hard research to collect facts, or they are unaware that such facts about history can still be found. Nothing in this statement has anything to do with what I said. I was talking about how our view can shift external conditions of the realm if we get enough people to align with natural law. Again, I am not contesting your chronology whatsoever. I'm not trying to date things. I suck at dating things, man. I'm really bad with name, dates, and places. You're amazing at that. Hence, why I listen to you and defer to your knowledge base on those matters. So, thanks for calling me embarrassing, man, but you also completely missed what I was saying, which I can take ownership for in part because of how quickly I rushed through things. But that was me really just trying to be conscientious of your time. So, no, it's not embarrassing. You are wrong here, Jason. It is very noticeable that of all those claiming to challenge the ARCHAIX model, every single person has cherry-picked what they wanted to draw attention to, which automatically draws attention away from the core ARCHAIX fundamentals that have thus far remained untouched. My video today on the Kali Yuga is a perfect example of data trumping esoteric interpretation. Esoteric, non-fixed chronology is what you promote, which is an offense to anyone who has gone through and understood my chronological research. Esoteric, non-fixed chronology is what you promote. No, it is not. Not at all. I promote your chronology. But you totally conflated what I was saying with triggers that trampled over the nuance of what I was offering. So, okay. Sorry you feel that way. It's not an offense. I didn't do that. I didn't attack you. I didn't intend to distort your points of view. I defer to your chronology. I was expressing extenuating perceptual ways by which to understand esotericism without changing anything about Chronicon. Esotericism just adds additional perspective. It doesn't take away from anything. And to really understand, it's mostly done through storytelling. And that's because, right now, if you had an entity next to you and that shit popped up and you didn't know what was going on, you might just, shoot at the motherfucker, you know? If we really saw everything that was going on, we might just freak out. So, if those people who are able to see more, they gotta be all like, alright, how much can we let people know is going on without them just freaking the fuck out, you know? It's one of those things. Or cakes out. He didn't say that, but cheers, buddy. Nothing but the utmost respect for you. And holy, coffee is so real. I mean, isn't that it? We're in a simulacrum, but coffee, that's real. I agree. Hopefully that clarifies for everybody. For anyone who wants a longer, slower, more fully cited, advanced lecture series on my personal perspective about our existence and stuff, and I say this because a few different people in the comment section asked, you can check out the 3-part series of Deconstructing the World Stage, Electrical Alchemy, and Electrical Alchemy Part 2. They're up for free. They have a bunch of really cool clips and concepts and a lush variety of sources and insights. I mentioned this because, once again, a few people asked me about it. It's not something that I put on YouTube, along with a lot of my other content, which is available at conspiracysynergy.com. That's not on YouTube because I would have things that are unlisted on YouTube, and I'd be getting flagged for it during lockdowns. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm still largely unknown because I've been shadow banned and censored and all these different things, and it's one of those things that we've all been going through. So conspiracysynergy.com is a good way to check out my stuff, and tease.ca is my personal artistic website, because I'm a filmmaker originally, and I've also been researching all this stuff. I'm trying to make films about really important things, which is why I'm trying to make a documentary about ARCHAIX, because I think that'd be fucking epic, and I need to tell your story in a really meaningful way. So anyway, Jason, my man, I apologize again if I came across with the impression that I was coming at you wrong. I remember like one video that you said, like when you were first in prison or something, like, and if someone came up to you and like either you didn't vibe with them or like you didn't really understand what they were saying, you just like pop them in the mouth. But bro, you don't got to do that with me, because like when I was younger, I was like playing frisbee one time and I was laughing, and like the frisbee bounced off the top of my fingertips and it knocked out my two teeth. Hence, I got a gold tooth now. So you don't got to pop me in the mouth, man. It's like nature already did it for you. It's one of those things where I really do have the utmost respect and appreciation for you and everything you do. I ain't trying to come at you wrong. I understand that that's a lot of what's going on, but that ain't me, dude. So thank you to Big John and the ARCHAIX community. A lot of the ARCHAIX veterans, you're epic, you're wonderful. A lot of the comment section, honestly, it was just like ad hominems, and it didn't really add anything to the conversation. So I don't know what's going on with people who just feel the need to throw shit rather than actually just like have a nuanced conversation. I hope you're doing okay. A lot of the time when I feel like I gotta like attack someone else is because I'm really hurt, you know. It's like I'm not doing great. So for anyone who felt the need to attack me or to just make ad hominem kind of like comments about me, I hope you're doing okay, and that you're able to move out of that way of communicating and express the depths of things that you understand, because I don't doubt that you know a lot and you have a lot to share, more than just trying to throw shit at a motherfucker, you know. So yeah, I really, really do have the utmost respect for all of y'all, and I'm not trying to attack the extent of anything that has been put forward. I'm really just trying to stress the significance of our perspective, of our thinking of what intelligence is, of our extending the view out from it being a human-centric experience to a holistic organism of which we are viscerally entwined. And here's a really simple thought process at the end of all of this, and I'd be really curious what your thoughts on this are, Jason, because I might still not fully understand your perspective on the animal kingdom as it relates to human beings. Do dogs have souls? Do your dogs have souls? Like, would you feel comfortable looking one of your dogs in the eyes that you love very much and saying with complete certainty to that dog while looking him in the eyes that you do not have a soul? Would you be comfortable with that? Would you feel on some level of your being that it's not true? That maybe there's more going on than just the human point of view? Because the partnership animals, dogs, cats, horses, and elephants, in the idea that incarnative cycles go from one realm to another, from plant, animal, mineral, that kind of thing, that's the final stage of development before someone would end up being a human being, would be a loyal companion in the form of a dog or a cat or of a horse or of an elephant. And I think that they very much do have souls, and that this isn't just as simple as a construct built around people. I think it's a dream shared between us all. Anyway, much love, bro. Thanks for taking the time to check it out. If anybody wants to look into that series that I recommended, or any of the other different things that I'm putting out there, I also co-host a show on Rumble called AM Wake Up every Wednesday. That's when we really go into this, and I've been recommending ARCHAIX for a while on that channel. And once again, I'm kind of spread out like this just because I am brutally shadow banned, and I was not posting any of this to try and just get clickbaits or views. The title of this video is a joke. Once again, I'm just kidding. I'm just being playful. In no way, shape, or form is my impersonation of Jason and having things in this book right here. That's not coming from like a mockery place, man. I think you're epic. So thanks for tuning in, everybody. Have a happy holidays and everything. And that's all I gotta say for now. Thanks for watching.